you're having a good day. Hope that your week has gone well. Hope that you are excited to be in the house of the Lord. I get that there is some energy in the house of the Lord this morning. Yeah, and maybe it's Chris. Maybe it's Pastor Chris. Maybe he needs to be up here every Sunday morning welcoming you, because I feel like when he gets up here, you guys just have a little bit more energy. And he is a rock star. And I appreciate Pastor Chris. Anyway, your pastors Mike and Chad are away. Pastor Chad is with his wife in Greenfield. Pastor Mike is up in Fairfield. Pastor Chad is filling in the pulpit for Greenfield just because they're without a pastor, and so he's rotating in for 1 week to give them some assistance. And Pastor Mike is traveling just to encourage the church. Often that means that he ends up preaching. He shows up in the morning to say hi and to encourage people, and they say, "Good, where are you preaching at?" We'll make sure that your text is announced. And he says, "Oh, okay, well, I guess I'll be preaching this morning." So we have no idea what is actually going to happen with him. But pray for them, both families as they are traveling, because I think it's great that our church has men that can fill the pulpit elsewhere when needed. I think that's amazing. That we have a depth of bench that allows for that to happen, because for one thing, it encourages other churches to hear good preaching from our church. The other thing is it allows for us as a congregation to get behind, to rally behind the men that are doing work in the state and encouraging them. And so I love the fact that we're able to do that. Pastor asked me to continue on in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. So we're going to be in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 7. We will only deal with verse 7 this morning. We will close out this section of the text, and then Pastor will conclude the sermon on loving one another next week, I believe. Anyway, that's the thought. And then tonight, Brother Stan and Miss Suzanne are going to be presenting their time down in St. Croix. So we want to encourage you to be back tonight at 5 o'clock to hear their presentation. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 7. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Lord, we pray this morning that as we consider your word, this would be an opportunity for change. A time where we are challenged to look at the way in which we love, to model our love after you, to consider our relationships as of utmost importance in this world, and to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to invest in others. We pray this morning as we dive into your word that you would encourage us, speak to our hearts through the text. Amen. As I was preparing for this, I said, Jesus bears all things. Jesus believes all things. Jesus hopes all things. And Jesus endures all things. When we think about the way in which the world operates with love, you get this idea that love is touchy-feely. Love is friendly. Love is about feelings. Love is about all of those the things that happen in our stomach when we see that person that's beautiful. Like, love happens to be something that is fleeting. In fact, some ideas of love that we see from our society. Robert Ingersoll, love is the magician, the enchanter, that changes worthless things into joy and makes right royal kings and queens of common clay. It is the perfume of that wondrous heart, the flower, and without that sacred passion, that divine swoon, we are less than beasts, but with it, earth is heaven and we are gods. Kind of get this idea that the world thinks love is poetic. Love can be fleeting. Unfortunately, in the world, you also see a great example of love that does not bear all things. Love that does not hope or believe. Love that does not endure through anything. You see love that is temporary. And love that ceases to remain firm. Ceases to care for people when things get hard. And so when you read of love in the New Testament, the idea is love is hard. Love is difficult. Love is not something that happens overnight. In fact, love requires investment. Love requires us to be firmly established in relationship with people. And without that, then love is just some other idea. But what we see from Jesus in the New Testament is his example of love. Jesus, his sacrifice, his death, his resurrection, his ascension back into heaven. This idea of Jesus loving the world. God said, I loved you so much that I sent Jesus to you when you were in the thick of sin. When you were so completely lost from me, I sent my son, the greatest one that I could send. I sent him to you because I love you so much. I desire that your life be changed through love. And so love is undergirded with the idea, the thought, the hope of salvation. If love does not include salvation, then love is misplaced. Let me repeat that. If love does not include salvation, then I believe love is misplaced. Love is about something far greater than feelings. Love goes deep into my desire to see that person changed through Jesus Christ. So when we think of love, it goes way beyond this idea of feeling, and it says the gospel should always take precedent in all of my relationships. That's a different notion of love. That makes us stop and think, well, wait a minute. If my love for people is so strong that I need to take the gospel of Jesus Christ to them, then that means that I'm living a different type of love than what I've been acclimated to. That the rest of society is telling me to live love in one way, and the Bible is telling me to live love in another way. And how do I choose between the two? How do I choose the more important of the two? So this morning, as we look at love, I want to just start with this. Love is hard, but Jesus is our example for love. I want to read something from Dallas Willard, a theologian, who talks about Jesus and talks about the power of Jesus Christ. And as I read this, I want you to think in your minds, what is Jesus doing through his miraculous works to undergird his notion of love? Dallas Willard says this, at the literally mundane level, Jesus knew how to transform the molecular structure of water to make it wine. That knowledge also allowed him to take a few pieces of bread and some fish and feed thousands of people. He could create matter from the energy that he knew how to access from the heavens right where he was. He knew how to transform the tissues of the human body from sickness to health, from death to life. He knew how to suspend gravity, interrupt weather patterns, eliminate unfruitful trees without a saw or axe. He only needed a word. Surely he must be amused at what Nobel Prizes are awarded for today. In the ethical domain, he had an understanding of life that has influenced world thought more than any other. Death was not something imposed on him by others. He explained to his followers in a moment of crisis that he could call down at any time 72,000 angels to do whatever he wanted. He plainly said, nobody takes my life. I lay it down by choice. All these things show Jesus' cognitive and practical mastery of every phase of reality, physical, moral, and spiritual. Saying Jesus is Lord can mean little in practice for anyone who has to hesitate in saying Jesus is smart. He's not just nice, he's brilliant. He's the smartest man who has ever lived. He is now supervising the entire course of human history while simultaneously preparing the rest of the universe for our future role in it. He always has the best information on everything, and certainly on the things that matter most in human life. One more time. He always has the best information on everything, and certainly on the things that matter most in human life. So if Jesus is our example of love, what does it look like for Jesus to love through bearing all things, believing? He's already started by inserting himself into the text. And I did that this week, and sure enough, it is very difficult to preach a sermon where you are not convicted when you insert yourself into the text. Bryan bears all things. Interesting is my response to that. But I want you to be included in this. We're going to repeat things to practice that, okay? So get that through your mind. We're going to repeat that. You are going to insert yourself in the text. But what does it mean for you to bear all things? The idea of bearing brings with it this covering of silence. Okay? To bear something means I cover it in silence. I put a blanket of silence over it so that stuff ceases to be important. Why do most divorces happen? They happen in the first 5 or so years of marriage, or after 20 or 30 years of marriage. And you really see these polar opposites in divorce. You see the first 5 years or so, you're learning to live with someone. You're learning to acclimate your life to someone. You're learning what it means to be heavily invested with someone else in your life. Someone who is always around you. And that's difficult for some people. When they are face to face with someone who is annoying, who does the toothpaste wrong, who doesn't do the dishes right, whatever, fill in the blank. When you were heavily invested with someone, a partner who is not doing things like you would have them do them, it's irritating, right? Now I know some of you are thinking, my marriage is blissful. We've never done anything to irritate each other, ever. Okay, fine. I will accept that premise if you will accept this premise, that the church, while it is stuck in relationship with others, irritates people, right? We find irritable people in the church, people that do things the wrong way, people that worship the wrong way. Chris and I were just talking as we were getting started. I said, Chris, I feel almost badly for crossing my arms as I'm worshiping. I mean, I'm singing with all of my might when I'm singing, but I'm crossing my arms. I just feel comfortable crossing my arms when I sing. He said, until you get the person who's raising their hands up next to you, and they're going to make you feel like you're shameful in the way that you worship Jesus. Well, Chris, I don't like that. I don't like it when you point out that people might be worshiping Jesus better than me. But we find people in the church that do stuff. They just do it wrong. You're not doing it right. And they irritate us. They get on our every nerve. Paul is writing to the Corinthian church saying, you guys are invested with people. And sometimes, as you are invested with people, your love must cover over or blanket in silence some of those things that are non-factors. Now, I will grant you, there are some things that are chasms, that must, rifts within the congregation or within the relationship that have to be addressed. I get that. And I'm not saying that we don't have conversation over relationships. What I am saying is that in your relationships, some of the things that are minor literally must remain minor. They cannot be the overriding factor in your relationship. We have polar opposites here too. You have people who will bring up every single little thing that is ever done wrong. And then you have people on the opposite side who will never ever say anything that is ever wrong, and they will lie down like a doormat. You have two polar opposites. That is the way we generally treat people in a relationship. We either say everything that needs to be said, and we exhaust a person through our idiosyncrasies, or we don't say anything at all, and we just allow people to plow right over us. And Paul is saying, hey, at some point we need to blanket over some of these things that are non-issues. But when something really is important, that's when you have a conversation about it. That is the stuff that makes up a good relationship. And so if Jesus is our example and love is undergirded with salvation, then I have to start thinking about bearing all things through the perspective, through the lens of salvation. So what does it mean for me to love someone and love their heart so deeply that I care about their soul? Can I love someone so deeply that I care about their soul and ignore some of the minor petty issues? Is that possible? Charles Spurgeon, as he was preaching on the nature of God, and he was preaching on the nature of salvation from God, he started to say this. How frequently you who are coming to Christ look to yourselves, rather than looking to Christ as your example. I am too unworthy. That's looking to yourself. I cannot discover, says another, that I have any righteousness. It's quite right to say that you have not any righteousness, but it is quite wrong for you to look for any. It is, look unto me. This is what God is saying. Look unto me. God will have your eye off yourself if you would look on him. The hardest thing in the world is to turn a man's eye off of himself as long as he lives. For he always has a predilection to turn his eyes inside and look at himself. Whereas God says, look to me. And if salvation is undergirding our idea of love, then we have to stop looking at ourselves so much and start looking at what God says is my love and my salvation for people. Because my love must be produced out of a heart of saving people. But Bryan, my spouse is already saved. My children are already saved. Great. Your love should produce within them a continual effect of growing in their salvation. And maybe your coworkers, or your family, or your friends, or your neighbors are unsaved. Then your love should produce within them a desire to find salvation in Jesus Christ. And in order for that to happen, we must cover over some things in silence. We were recently watching a video on puppies. Found that Scarlett, she was having a little bit of a rough week this week, so we turned on the TV, as any good parent does, right? And we started watching puppies because she loves Jackson, our dog. Calls him Bubba. Every time that she sees a dog, she calls him Bubba. Any dog, doesn't matter who it is. And so we turned on the TV for a whole bunch of little Bubbas to fill the screen. And they were talking about a mother dog who had 10 puppies and 8 nipples upon which to feed. And you see the terror in the dog's eyes, the mother's eyes. And you see she's wincing in pain and agony when her puppies come to feed. And there's this idea that it hurts her to feed the animals. But instead of making a big deal out of it, what does she do? She licks, she grooms, she cleans, she cares for, and she loves her little puppies. The idea of love covering over with a blanket is one that says, I'm going to focus on that which is important in my relationship with you. I'm not going to allow the minor things to infiltrate and frustrate my life. In 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 12, we'll spend most of our time in 1 and 2 Corinthians this morning. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 12, Paul gives an idea of how he expects us to bear all things in love for the sake of the gospel. Verse 12, if others share this rightful claim on you, do we not even more? Nevertheless, we have not made use of this right, but we endure anything rather than put any obstacle in the way of the gospel of Christ. We endure anything rather than putting any obstacle in the way of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So, what is Paul saying? He's saying, if we were to make the gospel as preeminent in our lives, it is to be the number one thing that we're doing. We're sharing the gospel, and thus we are loving people through our sharing of the gospel. Then we have to make sure that any claim or right or privilege that we have in this gospel becomes secondary to the gospel itself. There are no speed bumps when it comes to sharing the gospel. When I was in Mexico for a couple of weeks, I was with Jerry Bryan, missionary in Mexico, and the first time that we started to hit the topes, roadblocks, the speed bumps. First time we started to hit the speed bumps, I was like, oh, this is annoying. As someone who prefers to drive at bare minimum the speed limit, I found it very annoying that on one street you could have 10 speed bumps. Like, it was frustrating. And they had signs. The sign says topes, and so as you get close to it, there's a sign telling you that there's the divot. Oh, we didn't even get to it. The sign was advertising the speed bump that we hit before we even got to the speed bump. There are so many pockets and roadblocks and everything in Mexico, it was driving me insane. And this was in my youthful days, where I might have driven a little faster than I should have at times. So I was thinking, we're never going to make it down to the churches in Mexico. Ever. Every tope, every speed bump frustrated me. And I started thinking later on, as I was preparing this message, I started thinking about those topes, those speed bumps. Because by the end of the trip, by the end of our 2-week trip, we were loving the speed bumps. It wasn't just a frustration that the speed bumps were there. We were loving them. We would come up, we would see the sign, and, hey, topes, here we whatever about the suspension. We were loving them. And it was amazing, the transformation in 2 weeks from the speed bumps that frustrated to the speed bumps that brought us so much joy. And I wonder if, as we are covering over our relationships, as we are bearing all things in love, I wonder if we can change some of our speed bumps from moments of frustration into moments of joy. In fact, Bonnie and I have giggled so much recently. Some of the things that frustrated us when we were younger, a few years ago when we were first married, those things, we giggle about them. In fact, she texted me something the other day, and she was like, hey, don't be mad about this. And I was like, I'm giggling to my heart's content. You have to understand, this is so funny. I cannot believe that I acted that way when I was younger. But those, what have been speed bumps before in our relationship, have now become moments of joy. And so as we are covering over, bearing all things in love, I wonder if we can produce a culture in our church that says, all those things that were frustrations, now I am going to celebrate those things because those make you unique. Those make you who you are. And those strengthen our relationship in the way in which we interact. My relationship is strengthened because of the speed bumps in our life. I need you to understand this. Letting love bear all things does not mean that you become a doormat and allow whomever to do whatever they want to you. Instead, it means patiently enduring things so that you can enjoy the meaningful part of a relationship. If you do have to have a conversation over an issue in your relationship, that's fine, but don't make every minor issue into a conversation. Number one, I must remember that loving requires me to patiently endure minor offenses. Loving requires me to patiently endure minor offenses. And I love this idea of making the most joy out of the meaningful parts of your relationship. What does it look like for me to experience joy in the midst of chaos? Secondly, love believes all things. Bryan believes all things. Your turn. 3, 2, 1. Bryan believes all things. Do you? Sometimes I probably believe more than I should. Why is it that churches are known for gossiping? There's something about the drama. There's something about spreading. There's something about watching someone's eyes bulge when you give them a juicy bit of information. It's not just churches, though. Let's be honest. It's families. It's workplaces. It's community. It's every place that you get to interact with people on a regular basis. But there's something about the juicy bits of information that I crave. I love them. I want them. Right? That's human nature. We are looking for those things. And sometimes we believe more than we should. But when Paul is writing about love believing all things, he's saying it's not just that you're believing things, it's that you are investing faith in someone else. In the New Testament, when this word is used about Jesus, it is, I am investing my faith in Jesus Christ. I am wholeheartedly endorsing Jesus Christ. I know that Christ is going to change my life. So when I side with Jesus, I'm putting my faith in Him. And that same word is used of love, of believing. I am putting my faith in someone. To have faith, to give them the benefit of the doubt, to credit them something that they might normally receive credit for. And what does that mean? It means, for one, that you are not taking credit for everything, but you are investing credit in other people. In leadership, they talk about credibility. They talk about how if you are going to be credible with someone, then you have to invest money in the bank with them. Credibility. You have to invest time with them, invest compliments with them, invest yourself into them. And the more that you invest in that person, the more that you develop credibility in their bank account. And then at some point, that credibility can be withdrawn. But I think most Americans are more concerned with taking the credit than they are with giving it to someone else. And so we are withdrawing our bank account way too early. We are withdrawing credit from the bank account before it even exists. And so what happens to our relationships? We are siphoning things out of people. We're siphoning stuff out of people rather than investing in other people. When Paul says, love believes all things, Christ believes all things, Christ invests in other people and has faith in other people and gives them the benefit of the doubt and gives them credit in their bank account. What does that mean for us as a church? Love places faith in someone and gives them credit. If we take them at their word, we might have different sorts of relationships altogether. But if we have been trained to mistrust people, as society is doing, then we find ourselves quickly mistrusting anyone and everyone. Think about the way that our society has trained us. Does your word ever count for taking out a loan? Ever? No. You put up collateral. If you want a loan, if you want to take money out of a lending institution, you put up collateral. If you are going to purchase a house, they're not going to give you a loan unless that house is worth the money that you are taking out for that loan. Think about the way that we treat our people that are arrested. In our society, we are innocent until proven guilty, and yet the moment that someone is arrested, the news will spin that into saying they must have been arrested for a good reason. Therefore, they are guilty. And I'm not saying that our police officers are arresting people inappropriately. I'm saying that the moment that someone is arrested, there is no more credibility for that person. We have immediately siphoned all credibility out of them because the media says it must have been legitimate. Therefore, as soon as someone is arrested, there is no innocence anymore. The innocence has been robbed from them. The way in which we treat people. If someone does something negative to me, I remember that. The next time that they do something negative to me, I still remember the first thing that they did and the second thing. And over time, I've developed a black book of negativity for each person. So everyone that has done something negative to me, I remember all of those things. And therefore, I'm not going to give you the benefit of the doubt if you have done something negative to me multiple times in a row. And love, putting credit in people, believing in people, says, I am going to put my faith in you because your salvation is the one thing that is so important to my life that I cannot ignore this relationship. If love is undergirded by my desire to see someone saved, to see them realize salvation in Jesus Christ, then I am investing in that person for the benefit of their salvation. And therefore, I have not only blanketed over all the small, minor offenses, but I have also invested credibility in that person. You say, Bryan, there's some people that have lost all credibility. Sure. What does it look like for you to give them more? And it's not just giving them credibility upon credibility upon credibility. It is saying, I want to help you grow. Because investing in you means I am providing training for you. Think about the family nucleus. The family unit is the primary way that we are supposed to transmit salvation. The family unit is the primary way where we're supposed to teach biblical principle, where we are supposed to invest in our children, invest in our spouse, invest in those that are regularly associated with our nucleus, our primary family. That means that there are times when, as I'm training children, there are times where I have to say, you have lost all credibility in this area. I see you fail over and over and over again, and yet I'm still going to invest in you yet again. And if the same were true of our relationships in the church, or our relationships at work, relationships with other people, that is, I am going to still continue to invest in you. You have broken credibility with me. I'm going to do everything that I can to help you restore it. Love, believing in people, means that I am investing so much. Give us, this is Peter Marshall, give to us clear vision that we may know where to stand and what to stand for. Because unless we stand for something, we shall fall for anything. Therefore, I am proposing this morning that we stand for building people up. Because if we do not stand for something in love, then we will be taken out by anything that society provides to us. Part of human nature and our sin proves out that fallen people disappoint us. So what do we do when we're afraid of being disappointed? Where we don't want it to happen over and over and over again. I think Paul is suggesting that we don't allow people to get away with intentional sin, but we make sure that we are with that person all along the way. Okay? So what does it mean if Chris disappoints me, Chris does something that is so sinful? This is hyperbole, right? Because we know Pastor Chris would never ever do anything so sinful. But just imagine, Chris does something so sinful. I have two responses. I can reject him for doing something sinful, or I can come alongside him and say, I'm going to do everything that I can to work with you, to build you, to strengthen you, to lift you up. I care about you as a person. Love bears all things. Love believes all things. Number two, I must remember that loving others requires me to give them the benefit of the doubt. Requires me to give them the benefit of the doubt. And if and when they prove that they have done something wrong, then I still invest in them. I don't shut them out. I don't cut them off. This is a spirit-invested, spirit-infused way of living. If we create a culture of believing in people and building them up, then we are allowing people the opportunity to grow and to become more mature. But I have to make a space for that. I have to make room for someone to grow and mature. If I don't, if I just close them off, then they're going to do exactly what I expect them to do. They're going to fail me. But if I invest in them over and over and over again, maybe one of those times, they won't fail me. And they will have grown a little bit closer in their walk with Christ. Love hopes all things. Jesus hopes all things. Bryan hopes all things. Together now. Bryan hopes all things. This is to expect or to confide in. This has undertones of salvation. What is the most important thing that you could ever hope for in this world? Freedom from sin. There's nothing that compares to that. Nothing. So the primary hope that is our example for what hope looks like in this world comes from our salvation in Jesus Christ. The hope that I have in Christ is produced out of an effect of salvation. I am anticipating salvation. I am expecting salvation. I am waiting eagerly for salvation. So all of my hope is undergirded by salvation. So if love bears all things, love covers it over, love blankets it in silence. If love bears all things, love believes all things, invests in people, provides credibility for people, partners with people to see them grow, then love also hopes for all things. That in those two instances, I have done everything that I can to build this person up, to lift them up, to bring them that much closer to Christ and salvation so that their hope is in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And again, you may be hoping expectantly with someone that is already saved. The purpose is not just to see the people that are unrighteous, the people that are not living faithful for Jesus, to come to Jesus. It is also to see those that have committed their lives faithfully, to live faithfully to Jesus Christ, that they continue to live their lives faithfully for Jesus Christ. This hope is I am creating, through the power of God's Spirit, I am creating a new place, a new way of living. And Jesus does this. He says, I have expectations for you that go well beyond what you have ever thought for yourself. My hope for you brings you to be a better person. And it is all centered around Jesus Christ. Has anyone ever read Moby Dick? Anyone? Had to maybe read it for class or for school or something like that. This one snippet of when they are desperate, they are without hope. This one snippet, I think, starts to enlighten our idea of hope in a dark world. So, cutting the lashing of the waterproof match keg. After many failures, Starbuck contrived to ignite the lamp in the lantern. Then stretching it on a wave pole, handed to Quake as the standard bearer of this forlorn hope. There, then, he sat, holding up the imbecile candle in the heart of that almighty forlornness. There, then, he sat, the sign and symbol of a man without faith, hopelessly holding up a hope in the midst of despair. Let me paint this picture. There's a dark storm, and there is no light, and they are completely and utterly without hope. And the one salvation, the one spark of hope, is one man holding a candle that flickers in the storm, that flickers in the darkness, for all to see that there is something that they can long for, and that is the coming of the new day. In our dark world, we invest in people through hope, through love, because there is a flicker of hope for a bright new day that is coming. That flicker of hope comes through Jesus Christ. To love one another means that we are vested in their future, and often we find some form of polarization of this in the church. Again, we find it very easy to disregard people or to invest in people, but never really a balance of the two. I like to invest in the people that are like-minded, people that are like me. I like to invest in people that like me, not invest in people that don't like me. Because why would I want to invest in someone that doesn't like me? I'm just setting myself up for heartache, for hurt, for failure. But hope is holding out hope that Christ will redeem even those that are the most unlovable. And that I would love them in spite of their unloving nature, in spite of their characteristics that have proven over and again that they don't like me, and they disapprove of the way in which I act. 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 1 through 9. We'll read a little bit more in this text. Paul is encouraging the Corinthian church. This is after his initial message. This is the second or third letter to them. And he's writing to them to tell them about the Macedonian church. The Macedonians have done something greater beyond themselves. And I want you to look to the Macedonian example for the way in which they inspire other people to live in a more generous and a more loving lifestyle and manner. He says this, and now, brothers, chapter 8, verse 1. We want you to know about the grace that God has given the Macedonian churches. Out of even the most severe trial, their overflowing joy and their most extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. For I testify that as much as they had, they gave as much as they were able, and even beyond their ability, entirely on their own, they urgently pleaded with us for the privilege of sharing in this service to the saints. And they did not do as we expected, but they gave themselves first to the Lord and then to us in keeping with God's will. So we urge Titus, since he had earlier made a beginning, to bring also to completion this act of grace on your part. Do the same thing as the Macedonians are doing otherwise. But just as you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in your love for us, see that you excel in this grace of giving. See that you excel in giving beyond what you even can bear to give. I'm not commanding you, but I want to test the sincerity of your love by comparing it with the earnestness of others. For you know the good grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, for your sakes he became poor, so that you through his poverty might become rich. You have been invested by Christ. Christ is invested in you. He's given you more than you ever thought that you could ever imagine to receive. And so if Christ is invested in you, then you therefore must invest in others. You must provide hope for them and do it beyond what you expect to receive back in return. Do it out of the generosity of your heart. Work with other people besides all the gifts. The Corinthians were filled with gifts, were they not? They had tons of gifts. In fact, they celebrated the fact that they were so gifted as a church. And Paul says, I don't care about all your gifts if your gifts are going by the wayside. But even beyond the gifts that you have been given, reach out beyond yourself to give generously, to excite, to impassion love for other people out of that which you find yourself most poor. And so when we invest hope in other people, when we hope to see them come to a greater understanding of salvation in Jesus Christ, or even to come to salvation in the very first place, when we are investing hope, it is because I have so much desire to see you grow that I will do everything that I can, even beyond what I am able to do, to invest in you. This is completely beyond the American notion of investing in people. Anyone watch Shark Tank? Out of curiosity? It's kind of fun. But I've seen them say, this investment is not worth my time. I'm not going to invest because I will not get enough out of it. Or it's going to take too long for me to get anything out of this. Out of my partnership with you, therefore I will not invest in you. That is the notion of American investment. I will only invest if and when I realize that I will get something out of it. And it has to be a pretty good return. The investment of the salvation, the investment of hope in people, goes beyond anything that I would ever get in return. It has nothing to do with my return. It has to do with their return. So I must remember, number 3, that loving others requires me to invest in them for the cause of Christ. I must remember that loving others requires me to invest in them for the cause of Christ. We do things differently in the church. We don't continue to live as the world lives. The world has already given us a standard that is fair. We do things differently because we are the church. We should be marked by bearing all things, believing all things, hoping all things, and enduring all things. Jesus endures all things. Bryan endures all things. Your turn. Bryan endures all things. I go back to the marriage relationship. Marriages are falling apart because at some point for sickness and in health, for richer, for poorer, ceased to become the standard by which we committed to our relationship. Even to our friendships, our deep and committed friendships, the moment that they cease to be something important, the moment that they get difficult, the moment that they get hard, we jump ship. We're done with it. In our fast-paced American culture, we don't have time to deal with people that are not investing in us. But Jesus, when he is talking about enduring, Jesus tells his disciples, you will endure or you will fail because people are going to persecute you. If you want to follow me, you will find persecution. You will realize very, very quickly that people hate me. They hate the challenge that I offer. They hate that I have something different from what is comfortable for them. And you will endure persecution. The idea of persecution is not one that we as a church take seriously sometimes. When it comes to love enduring all things, it is this idea that love stays behind. Love remains. Love undergoes trials. Love bears those trials. Love has fortitude and perseverance. Love is steadfast. And I said at the beginning, love is hard. So when love endures all things, it is this idea that love stays behind and remains strong. Simply put, love does not run away and hide when things begin to seem unbearable. Instead, love does the exact opposite. When things get unbearable, love charges in. And it's not just enough for me to say, yes, I'm going to be committed to this relationship, or yes, I'm investing in you, or yes, I want to do this, but to love that person means I'm going to live out the stuff that I say. When I say I love you, it means I am there at your side through everything. No matter how you treat me, no matter what happens, no matter the circumstance in my life, I am there to be with you. I endure everything. And in fact, I point you to Christ because he lifts up your burdens in a way that I or you could never do. When Jesus talks about enduring, he brings with it the idea that people will persecute you and you must remain steadfast. As his example of endurance lives on for us, his endurance on the cross, his endurance through the resurrection, his endurance through the ascension, his endurance through creating and continuing to be in the creative act of this world. Jesus Christ's endurance is an example for us. As his example of endurance lives on, we too must from the perspective of hope.